this. And what they're looking at is information that they developed over the last 2 years that Al-Qaeda is not a group, it's a network. And I think Secretary Powell said the same thing this morning. It is a network, and this network has been mutating over the past 2 years, and they've been trying to study this mutation. For example, Al-Qaeda has been reaching out to other terrorist groups, especially in North Africa and especially Algerians. And in 1994, for example, the only other case kind of similar to this was a hijacking that went bad for the Algerian terrorist group GIA, which has contacts to bin Laden. And in that case, they wanted to ram that jet into the Eiffel Tower, but that did not work. And so they're looking at that. They're also looking at possible significance of dates. Why did this happen in September? They know that bin Laden recently, and if you look at his most recent videotape that came out a few months ago, in that tape, he really embraces the Palestinian Intifada, which is a real shift for bin Laden. In the past, it has been American presence overseas. So they are looking at possible symbolism of September, going back to Black September, which was the radical Palestinian group that hijacked 4 planes back in 1970. 3 of those were successful hijackings, and also they were responsible for the Munich massacre during the Olympics. So they're looking at all of these things, going through their files, but nothing hard yet.
It's a great indicator of just how much work there is to be done here. Mike Boettcher, thank you very much. We'll be talking with you throughout the day on this one. Darren, over to you.
Leon, thank you. The stories about so many things, of course, fear and shock about what has happened to the United States. On a very practical matter, though, for many travelers, it means they are stuck wherever they were yesterday morning and they can't get home. Originally, the FAA had said early as possible the air restrictions on U.S. airspace would be lifted at noon today. We reported over an hour ago that that was not going to happen at noon. We have yet to hear what time that could be reinstated, but meanwhile, we're getting word that when flights do resume in the U.S., they will look very different than what we are used to as Americans. And with more on that, let's go to the White House, and our Kelly Wallace is standing by with more information on that. Kelly.
Well, Darren, obviously a big concern for many passengers around the country, but certainly a big concern for the administration. Senior administration officials telling my colleague John King just a short time ago that the full expectation is that Transportation Secretary Norman Mineta would have some announcement later today. Now, that the reason that this 12 noon Eastern time deadline has come and gone, we had senior administration officials telling CNN last night that the full expectation was that the airports would open at 12 noon Eastern time. These senior officials saying that the reason that deadline has come and gone and that the airports have not been reopened is that they really haven't had enough time to put sufficient security precautions in place. We heard Secretary Mineta say last night that they are going to impose tougher security guidelines and measures at the nation's airports before they reopen. Now, I did talk to another law enforcement source earlier who said, look, the U.S. government wants to be comfortable. It certainly wants to open up the airports as quickly as possible, get people back to normal, get U.S. business up and running. But the U.S. government also wants to be comfortable that proper security measures are in place. This source saying that there is a whole menu of recommendations on the table, including toughening security on the ground, such as checking in, such as identification, maybe even no curbside checking at some airports, and even some more security measures in the air, such as putting more air marshals on planes. So a lot of discussion right now, though, Darren. The full expectation, though, some announcement coming from Secretary Mineta later today. As you can see, the U.S. government trying to balance sort of competing priorities here, trying to get things back to normal as quickly as possible, but definitely wanting tougher security measures in place. Darren, back to you.
Clearly, people flying across America want it to be safe, Kelly. I think one of the things that's difficult right now, before travelers and their loved ones had that noon deadline to at least look forward to, and now not only did the administration take that off the table, they haven't even put another one on. Any word on when that announcement might come?
No, as I told you, my colleague John King, hearing that Secretary Mineta expected to make some sort of announcement today, some expectation that possibly airports could reopen today, according to one law enforcement source. But again, while you said, Darren, that many people sort of hoping that airports would be up and running, I bet you that a lot of the people around the country certainly want to make sure that tougher security measures in place, steps are being taken. There's a lot of concern, as we've heard reported all throughout the day. I heard it yesterday when I was up in New York. A lot of people are concerned about how could this happen? How could 4 airliners be hijacked? And so certainly I think the American people would like to sort of see tougher measures in in place to try to, in some way, make sure this never happens again.
Yeah,
Darren, back to you.
absolutely. No one wants to fly if it's not safe, and you look at the same time, 4 different planes, 2 airlines, and 3 different airports, and it makes people feel very unsettled about how safe it is to fly here in the U.S. Kelly Wallace at the White House. Thank you, Leon.
Well, you know, this is a perfect point to check in on a few airports, and we've got a reporter spread out this morning. Our Kathleen Koch is standing by there at Dulles Airport, and we've got our Ed Lavandera. He's in Dallas. And Bill Delaney is standing by at Logan Airport, which is the point of much scrutiny today. Let's go now and start with Bill. Bill?
Well, much scrutiny. This airport is still closed, Leon, and closed indefinitely. But I want to say right at the beginning of our little report here, a rapidly developing situation. A local television station now reporting that the FBI has ID'd all suspects and is about to make arrests. We can't confirm that. It is being broadcast, however, on a usually reliable local station here in Boston. Now, what we also know, of course, has been reported throughout the morning. A car was taken from Logan Airport Central Parking Garage overnight, brought to an FBI processing facility. As Mike Boettcher mentioned earlier, that car being gone over. Interesting material, Mike Boettcher called it. It's being called more specifically by law enforcement sources here an Arab language training manual for flying a big airplane. That car, as well as seats from Logan Airport being gone over at an FBI processing facility, the seats being gone over, seats from the airport, for possible DNA evidence of who may have been involved with this, as I say, rapidly developing situation out here at the still closed Logan Airport. Back to you, Leon.
Well, Bill, before we let you go, let me ask you some more about this information you're hearing about the FBI being about to make some arrests right now. Does this mean the FBI is pretty much wrapped up what they're doing there at the airport? Is that what you're hearing?
This is a difficult situation. We want to be very careful. There was a press conference here, just ended about a half an hour ago, when Special Agent in Charge Charles Prouty of Boston absolutely refused to be drawn on any questions about the ongoing investigation. There are many strands to this story, including newspaper reports that several Arabs have been ID'd who may have been involved in the hijacking itself, including 2 carrying Middle Eastern passports, 1 known to be a trained pilot. That report out there from reliable law enforcement sources as well. But the FBI and state and local police officials absolutely refusing, really quite stone-faced, to be drawn on any of these questions at the press conference. This ended 20 minutes ago or so. So yes, there is a report out there just in the last few minutes from a usually reliable local television station here, but all of that denied earlier. The FBI saying they had nothing to tell us, that this was an ongoing investigation, and as I say, half an hour ago, they gave us no indication that anything was about to break here, Leon.
That actually is about what you would expect the FBI to say and to do. All right, thank you very much, Bill Delaney. That could turn out to be some very significant news that may be breaking very soon for us. We'll get back to you later. Let's go now to Dallas, where Ed Lavandera is standing by there. Ed, over to you.
Leon, the Dallas-Fort Worth International Airport is the 2nd largest airport in the country. 2,300 flights a day originate from here. So usually this is a place buzzing with passengers and buzzing with crews moving in and around, and the humming of airplanes flying overhead. But this place has been left completely deserted today outside of the intense security scene that we have seen here today. This is an American Airlines terminal. It has been completely shut down as crews here are doing security sweeps of the buildings. 152 airplanes are sitting on the tarmac here at DFW International Airport, waiting for the queue to be able to take off again. We have spoken with several airport officials and airline officials throughout the morning, saying that a lot of their crews have completely rested, so that when they do get the go-ahead to move ahead, the crews will be able to move ahead, but that there are a lot of airplanes out of place, so that when the government does give the official go-ahead to move forward with taking off again, that it could take a little bit of time to get a lot of these planes back into position. But they said that this is, in a lot of ways, is just like a severe storm, and that the airplanes and all the airlines will be able to get moving ahead quickly. Leon, back to you.
Ed Lavandera in Dallas, thank you very much. Now, let's go over to Kathleen Koch, who is standing by at Dulles National Airport. Kathleen.
Leon, as you can see behind me, this huge, normally bustling international airport is a barricaded ghost town. You see no one except media, except police officers moving around at this airport. When you look out on the tarmac where normally at this time of day there would be dozens of flights landing, planes lined up waiting to take off, there is nothing. There is not a ground crew. There is no human movement. The parking lot to my right is filled with cars, but no people, no one dragging their suitcases out, no one rushing to catch a flight. It is truly a very eerie sight. Now, of course, this is the airport where the doomed flight number 77, American Airlines Flight 77, departed from and then cut that huge gash into the Pentagon. Very near here is the Dulles Marriott, where we have had some families meeting there. They began arriving, some yesterday morning, a few more this morning, and they have been meeting with grief counselors, with chaplains. American Airlines has also established a set of people who have come in, some 75 of them, airline employees who have come in, and they're actually dispersing out to go to the homes of some of the families of these passengers who were killed in this deadly collision at the Pentagon, to help them cope, to support, to do whatever they can. Now, as the preceding reporters have all mentioned, that when these airports do open up, that security will be very tight. I know that Kelly at the White House referred to the possibility of actually having marshals on the aircraft. That will be a very difficult undertaking when you consider that in the United States, generally on an average day, we have 35 to 40,000 flights landing and taking off, 4,000 to 5,000 in the air at any time. So that will be hugely difficult. Another thing that will make the opening of the airports perhaps experience some delay is not the issue of the aircraft being out of position, but the fact that these airports are now going to have to meet these new, more stringent security measures before they can safely open up. Leon?
All right. Thank you very much. Kathleen Cook reporting to us live from Dulles National Airport. Now, let's go up to Paula in New York. Paula?
All right, and Leon, I'm going to take you directly back to Daytona Beach. We're looking at some interesting pictures from the Daytona International Airport, where we are told a bomb squad is thoroughly searching the cargo hold of a Continental jet. We don't know a whole lot about it, but it is our understanding that the luggage in this plane, for whatever reason, did not make its connection. We do not understand at this moment how this might be connected to the other stories coming out of South Florida. We know, according to Mike Boettcher, at least 10 FBI agents were searching 2 houses in Vero Beach, Florida, and what appeared to be a part of the investigation of the deadly terrorist attacks against the United States. We know that the FBI in Miami issued a national bulletin for law enforcement agencies to be on the lookout for 2 cars. The bulletin did not mention whether the vehicles were linked to Tuesday's attacks. This also comes on the heels of a report that a South Florida couple is indicating that they may very well have trained several of these hijackers, some men that might have trained with them a year ago. So once again, we don't know exactly what the connection of this bomb squad search at the Daytona International Airport has to these other Florida stories. But to me, Darren, one of the most interesting things is what Mike Boettcher was reporting about that car that the FBI agents have actually seized from a Boston parking garage outside of the Logan Airport there. He is reporting that some interesting materials have been seized from there. Bill Delaney going even further, his sources telling him that some Arab training manuals on flying a big plane were found in that car. So all of this will become clearer in the hours to come, as Bill Delaney reported earlier on. Lots of small bits of information that are very difficult to thread together and dangerous to thread together at this point.
Yeah, Paula, and another thing from our David Ensors, he pointed out earlier this morning, we were talking to him, this very difficult balance for government officials. They don't want information from their investigations to leak out, and yet they realize the American people are very hungry for information. Perhaps we can get some insight now on how these investigations work with Stanley Bedlington. He is a former CIA senior analyst, and he is joining us. It looks, sir, like you are in our Washington bureau, or is it New York?
No, I'm in Washington.
In Washington. Thanks for joining us, sir. Give us an idea and some clues as to how investigators are trying to put together some information. I was thinking particularly looking at the plane manifest. Who got on board these 4 airplanes?
Well, first of all, I think you approach that sort of investigation at 2 levels. First, from the level of law enforcement, and secondly, from the level of intelligence, both of which working closely in tandem. You look at the passenger manifest, you do checks with your records, your data banks, either in the CIA or in the FBI, and then you go out and investigate the people. You find their houses, their addresses, and just follow up on that. That, I think, is very, very important.
So you look at everybody who was on board each of those 4 airplanes.
Oh, absolutely. All must be very closely scrutinized.